My name is Summer. Right now, I'm on the receiving end of a tirade from my mother-in-law over the phone. Why on earth is the house gone? What in the world were you thinking doing something like this? My mother-in-law complained without listening to my side of the story. She doesn't seem to realize she's the one at fault. I let out a sigh. That must have ticked her off because her voice gets even louder. You better explain to me exactly why you turned that house into an empty lot. Well, let me start from the beginning. I decided to give my mother-in-law a full account of what led to this. The story takes us back to when I was a college student. My long-lived grandfather passed away, and a dispute over his inheritance had erupted in our family. I wasn't a squabble over money, though. The issue was about what to do with Grandpa's old house. It would cost quite a bit to dispose of it. On the other hand, everyone in the family already owned a house or an apartment. Managing another property, my grandpa's house seemed too much to ask. That's when the buck passing began. Even though the house was old, it was still livable, and the land it sat on belonged to my grandpa too. Inheriting it could be a good asset, and it seemed perfect for someone wanting to live alone. That's when I volunteered to take over the house, with an enthusiastic, "Sure, go ahead," from everyone. The old house and land became mine. So while I was still a university student, I became the owner of a house and land. There were inheritance taxes, of course, but that was a separate matter. I temporarily borrowed money from my parents and worked part-time jobs to pay them back. By the time I graduated from university, the house and land were truly mine. After graduation, I started working at a publishing company. Then, a friend introduced me to a great guy, and we started dating. That's my husband, Robert. Robert agreed to live with me in my grandfather's house. The house was old and not very convenient, but Robert never complained. I appreciated him for that. This is why I enjoyed our newlywed life. However, our blissful married life soon faced an unexpected turn. One day, my mother-in-law visited us and said, "We want to move out of our current apartment. Can we stay here until we find a new place?" Her family included herself, my father-in-law, and my sister-in-law. In other words, 3 people would be moving into our home. I was lost for words. Well, I stuttered, to which my mother-in-law responded with a sly grin. The contract on our apartment is up soon, and we'd have to break it if we renewed. You'll help us save money, right? I protested, but this is all so sudden. But she continued, I'll help with the housework. Sounds good, right? And just like that, I was forced into living with my husband's family. Luckily, our house was spacious and we had rooms to spare. There would be no problem accommodating everyone. And from my perspective, as someone who kept working after marriage, having my mother-in-law's help with housework seemed like a good thing. But I couldn't shake off the fear that living together might strain our currently pleasant relationship. I hope we can get along well, I mumbled. Despite some anxiety, our cohabitation began. However, living together quickly proved troublesome. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were always goofing around and never helped around the house. Even worse, My father-in-law would come home late at night and demand that I prepare meals. At first, I put up with it, but my patience soon wore thin. "Please help me with the housework, mother-in-law. That's what you promised me first," I pleaded. "Did I?" She feigned innocence. Then my sister-in-law chimed in. "How dare you talk back to your husband's parents? You're so insolent for a daughter-in-law." "But this is my house," I argued. "So what if it's your house? You are our daughter-in-law, aren't you?" "Well, yes, but..." "Whatever is our daughter-in-law's is ours, right?" I was too flabbergasted to reply. In the end, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law continued their ways. They partied all the time and never lifted a finger to help around the house. I tried talking to my father-in-law about it, but he said, "You are our daughter-in-law. You should respect us." "Excuse me?" "There's nothing good that comes from a daughter-in-law defying her in-laws. It'll just end in divorce and you'll be thrown out." My father-in-law seemed to be under some misunderstanding. Surely, if I were a stay-at-home wife without a job, I would have concerns about life after divorce. But I have a job and own assets, such as a house and land. Being told to divorce doesn't hurt or itch me in the least. Besides, whether to divorce or not is something my husband and I should discuss and decide, not my in-laws. I was irked, but there was no point in talking back any further. I'll take it as a good thing that I understood they wouldn't listen. Anyway, I'll have them leave, I muttered to myself. But it wasn't that easy. When I brought up the subject of moving, both my father-in-law and mother-in-law would change the topic. They'd find this or that reason to keep delaying leaving. Thinking it was strange, I consulted my husband. "Do you really think they intend to move out?" Now that you mention it, they do seem to be dragging their feet." "I don't like the thought of them squatting here indefinitely." "They might have a reason." We should look into this." "Yeah, let's ask our private detective friend." So our opinion was settled. At any cost, if we had to pay for the move, we wanted my mother-in-law and sister-in-law out. That was my first wish. About a month after that, one day, when I was about to scold my mother-in-law, who still wasn't doing anything, she came out with this first. "Summer, I want to apologize to you for always causing you trouble." "Apologize? Why don't we take a family trip together?" That was her proposal. After moving in, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had done nothing and left everything up to me. Far from that, they seemed to regret their haughty attitudes and pushing the housework onto me. So they thought they should apologize, it seemed. They'd discuss and concluded that a bonding trip would be the best. Needless to say, I thought if they felt that way, they should leave. But it was hard to complain to someone who was being humble. I chose a conciliatory approach. Both of us may have misunderstandings. It might be nice to go on a trip. Do you agree? My mother-in-law was so delighted. Then my sister-in-law, also happy, added, "We were thinking of an overseas trip. Where would you like to go?" "Anywhere is fine." "Well, we'll decide." "Oh, right." Suddenly, my sister-in-law interrupted herself. She turned to me with an apologetic look. "You see, we don't have any money right now." "Huh? You don't have money?" They had no money, but proposed a trip. Really, They were exasperating people. That aside, saying that they had no money could only mean one thing. As I was thinking, the exact words I expected came out of my sister-in-law's mouth.
"Could you lend us some money?"
Just as I was thinking to refuse, my mother-in-law said something unexpected.
"Your dad is retiring, so he will receive a retirement bonus. We can pay with that. You just have to front the money for now."
By dad, she means my father-in-law. Given his age, his retirement was indeed due. Moreover, the retirement bonus wasn't a mere assumption. It's a guaranteed sum of money that will surely come. Although I was slightly suspicious, I thought the money would definitely come in. And the matter we were discussing on our side required a bit more time, so it might be better to accept my mother-in-law's invitation and avoid causing tension between us. So, I accepted the idea of the trip. After that, I was informed by my mother-in-law and sister-in-law that they had decided on England as our destination.
"The flight departs at noon from JFK International Airport."
Understood.
"And it seems like the trip is going to cost quite a bit. But as we said before, can you front the money for us?"
Yes, I'll cover it. Even though it was just fronting the money, it was not a small sum. But at this point, I couldn't say no. Moreover, it seems like they've already made the reservation, so I might as well enjoy it. I gave the requested amount to my mother-in-law. Then, on the day of the trip, the meeting time was 3 hours before our flight. My husband Robert, who had been working the previous day, was staying at a hotel near the airport. Therefore, he was not with me. On the bus heading to the airport, I decided to try calling Robert. At that moment, a call came from Robert's phone before I could call him. "Hello, Robert? Are you awake?" I spoke, thinking it was my husband, but it was my mother-in-law's voice I heard over the phone.
"Summer, where are you now?"
"Mother-in-law?"
"Yes, where are you?"
"I'm on the bus heading to the airport."
"That's unfortunate. We're about to get on the plane now."
"What?" I was confused. Then my mother-in-law, with a sarcastic voice, dropped this bombshell.
"Actually, we're leaving at 9. Sorry."
"You lied to me?"
"It's a family trip, so we're going to enjoy it just as a family."
"What about my ticket? Canceling right on the day of departure is—"
"That's fine. You were never included in the count."
My mother-in-law laughed loudly. Apparently, this was all part of her plan. As I clutched my phone in frustration, my sister-in-law's voice came on.
"Are you upset? You're upset, aren't you?"
"Do you enjoy this kind of thing?"
"It's fun. Bye now."
At the moment, the line went dead with a strange noise, and the call was cut off. Immediately, I called back my husband. I could hear the ringing, but it wouldn't connect. Ultimately, I arrived at the airport just before the flight's departure time. When I asked the airport staff, they said that the plane had already entered the runway. There was nothing I could do but see the plane off. It would take a little over 15 hours for the plane I waved goodbye to arrive at its destination, and my mother-in-law and her cohorts would be back in about 10 days. I had plenty of time. Play games with me, and I'll show you who's the better player. I went straight home. I immediately contacted a demolition company and asked them to tear down my house. I also contacted a moving company to haul out all the belongings in the house. But it wasn't just my stuff in the house. There were things belonging to my mother-in-law, father-in-law, and sister-in-law. And because this was so sudden, I didn't have a new home ready. After some consideration, I decided to use one of the warehouses that was part of my grandfather's inheritance. This warehouse was something my grandfather had used for his business, and nobody was using it now. However, there was a large parking lot in front of the warehouse, which was currently being used by the people in the neighborhood. I had everything moved to that warehouse. After that, I notified my parents that I was going to rebuild the house. My parents asked why, but I told them I'd explain the details later and hung up the phone. I finally had a chance to take a breather when it was late at night. I had just fallen asleep when I noticed my phone ringing. It was an unknown number, and it was early morning, still dim outside. I hesitated but decided to answer the phone. "Hello? Is this Summer?" The person on the phone was my husband, Robert. "Robert, what do you want now?" "Sorry, has your fever gone down now?" "What? What are you talking about?" "Huh? I heard you had a high fever and—" As I listened more carefully to my husband's story, I could see my mother-in-law's careful maneuvers. Apparently, Robert had been told the correct meeting time. In other words, because the meeting time was early in the morning, he had purposely stayed at a hotel near the airport. When he went there at the meeting time, he quickly noticed that I wasn't there. When he asked my mother-in-law about it, she told him that I had gone to the hospital with a high fever. Robert was worried about me, but he thought he couldn't call the hospital. Furthermore, my mother-in-law pretended to be passing on a message from me and told Robert to enjoy the trip. So he thought he would enjoy the trip for my sake and departed without contacting me. But I guess my mother-in-law knew that Robert would call me eventually. She called me on Robert's phone just before departure. After they had riled me up, my sister-in-law pretended to accidentally break Robert's phone. Robert believed my sister-in-law's words that it wasn't on purpose and forgave her on the spot. But during the flight, he realized something was strange and called me as soon as he arrived at the hotel. "You've got to be kidding me! Even my sister was in on it? What the hell are they doing?" "Robert, are you pissed at what they did?" "Of course! I was looking forward to going on the trip with you, Summer." So it seems that Robert had nothing to do with it. If that was the case, I decided to get my husband's cooperation. I discussed the ongoing plan with Robert. "So that's how things are moving," I said. "I see. That sounds interesting," he responded. "I've prepped everything, Robert. You just need to act like you're enjoying the trip." "Understood." "And I have one favor to ask of you." "What's that?" "Bring back some souvenirs for me and also some for my colleagues." This was my only concern. Whenever one goes on a trip, it's customary to bring back souvenirs for colleagues at my workplace. In fact, I had even been asked to buy some branded items. I could say I was left behind, but that would be too embarrassing. It was a dilemma for me. But if Robert was on my side, it would change the situation. Now, everything was settled. I provided the list of souvenirs to Robert and focused on what I needed to do. After sunrise, I had a demolition team come over. After getting a quote, they immediately began tearing down the house. The work finished quickly, and the plot of land was cleared in no time. A few days later, my in-laws returned home. They started causing a commotion in front of the empty plot of land. Then they called me and started complaining non-stop. "That's the whole story. Did you understand?" I asked. "You've got to be kidding!" My mother-in-law yelled again. Even so, my mother-in-law was just on the other side of the phone. I wasn't scared at all, so I calmly retorted, "Well, it's pointless to say anything now. I've already demolished the house." "What happened to our belongings? Did you dispose of them?" "No, I didn't dispose of them. I'm keeping them." "You're nothing but a thief!" "I'm only keeping them. I'll return them if you pay." "Pay? For what?" "For the trip and the moving costs. You did say you would at least pay for the trip, didn't you?" See, you should pay up soon." At that, my mother-in-law fell silent. It seemed she was at a loss for a reply. Then I heard my sister-in-law whispering from behind her. At once, my mother-in-law asked me energetically, "Before anything, I want to know if our belongings are safe. Where did you take them?" "They are in the warehouse my grandfather used to use. Anyway, I won't return them unless you pay." "But your husband's retirement pension is coming, isn't it?" "That, yes, but Then please pay me back. I'll return your belongings once you do." With that, I hung up. Still, my mother-in-law kept calling incessantly. Finally, annoyed, I blocked all her calls. Feeling refreshed, my husband Robert arrived at the weekly mansion where I was staying. "I'm back, Summer." "Welcome back. Did you bring any souvenirs?" "Of course I did." "Thank you." I had considered returning to my parents' home. However, I didn't want to worry them. So, I informed my parents that we would be living in a weekly mansion for a while as we were rebuilding our house. Then, I actually rented the weekly mansion and moved there. I've been staying in touch with Robert regularly and had informed him about the move. So, after his return, he came directly to me. My in-laws must have found it strange that he was acting separately. I was nervous about getting found out, but I'm glad things worked out this way. "By the way, Summer, if you get money from Mom, do you plan to forgive her?" "If she promises not to interfere in our lives in the future, I plan to return her belongings and forgive her." "I'm just wondering if she'll pay up without a fuss." "Don't worry. The warehouse is locked, and she can't take anything out without paying me back." "There's no way to get into the locked warehouse. If they think it's possible, they'll give up and pay." I was confident about this. However, I couldn't expect a reasonable response from my in-laws, who lack common courtesy. I was reminded of this the following early morning. My phone rang in the dim morning hours. "Who at this hour?" I looked at my phone with sleepy eyes. It was another unknown number. When I answered the call, the person on the other side said, "I'm sorry for calling so early in the morning. I'm from the police." Police? I instantly woke up. I sat upright and listened to the conversation. There had been a disturbance at my grandfather's warehouse. It seems that a local resident who uses the warehouse parking lot had reported it. So when we arrived, we found an intruder who was causing a ruckus in the warehouse and apprehended them.
I see. So you've caught the culprit.
But the intruder says they're a family member of the warehouse owner. They asked us to contact the owner.
Wait, my family?
I had a bad feeling. When Robert and I rushed to the scene, several police cars were parked there. And in one of them were my in-laws.
Summer, help us!
My mother-in-law. My suspicions were confirmed. The intruders were my in-laws. Are these individuals indeed your family? They are technically my family. Robert and I apologized profusely to the police officer who arrived on the scene. In addition, we had to bow our heads to the local people who had heard the commotion. After we apologized, we heard my in-laws' side of the story with the police officer present. This was my in-laws' story. They claimed they didn't have enough money to cover the moving and travel expenses I had asked for. Apparently, they had spent my father-in-law's retirement funds on traveling and repaying their own debts. That was challenging enough. But then my sister-in-law chimed in with,
I've got a blind date tomorrow. Where are my clothes?
After some squabbles, they decided to take just what they needed from the warehouse. That's why the three of them broke into it.
But once we got inside, we found photos of us partying with men mixed in with our belongings.
This was a result of the investigation I had commissioned. In fact, when Robert and I asked a private detective to investigate my in-laws, it turned out that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had been goofing around with men. These men worked in the nightlife industry, and my in-laws had poured quite a lot of money into them. They had even taken on debts, some of which they repaid using my father-in-law's retirement funds. On the other hand, my father-in-law was having an affair with a younger woman from his workplace. Despite the nice ring to his retirement, the truth was that he had been fired for his affair. I received these reports and photo evidences just before my in-laws left for the trip. When they returned from the trip, I planned to use this as leverage to kick them out. But with things turning out this way, I had moved the photos to the warehouse along with my stuff. So, they broke into the warehouse, found the photos we had investigated, and that led to a fight over each other's misbehavior. Seems like that's the punchline of this whole fiasco. They totally brought this on themselves, I murmured. My mother-in-law shouted at me in anger.
What were you planning by taking these photos?
Like I care. When I retorted, my father-in-law yelled at me.
What have you done?
This could ruin our family. Well, that's your fault, isn't it?
What?
How dare you? As a daughter-in-law?
Enough. If you have complaints, I'll sue you for trespassing.
They'd all be arrested if it came to that. Realizing this, the three of them promptly quieted down. However, it was clear that none of them had the means to pay me back. So, I proposed another option to them. Would you rather work at a cannery to pay me back or get arrested for trespassing? Predictably, they chose the former, and I managed to get them jobs at a friend's cannery. They're working there every day now, earning the money they owe me. Meanwhile, I rebuilt a house on the land where my grandfather's house once stood. It's a brand new house, that still retains traces of my grandfather's house. Robert and I are starting our married life anew in this convenient new home.
Hey, where are you right now? I've been sleeping at home. Sleeping at home? There's no sign of my husband at our home, where I am now. He's lying to me. The story goes back to when I was pregnant with our first child. My name is Ashley. I was finally expecting our first child in our second year of marriage, just 1 month to go until my due date. I'm 9 months pregnant. While I'm excited about the birth, I can easily imagine the confusion of going through childbirth and child rearing for the first time. So I had planned to go back to my parents' house this weekend to have them help me out for a while. I mentioned the idea of going back home to my husband during the stable period of my pregnancy, but I thought he had probably forgotten, so I brought it up again today. Then, while lazily watching TV, my husband said, "Going back to your parents? Oh, I think you mentioned something about that. If you're going, why not just go? I'm not going to have any trouble without you here." What the? I was taken aback by my husband's dismissive words, but I didn't want to start an argument, so I decided not to push back. "Well, I'm going back this weekend. I'll be giving birth next month, and I'm planning on staying for a month or two afterwards, so I guess I'll be back in about 3 months. Please make sure the room is clean and ready for the baby." All right. I would have done it anyway. Oh, and I can't see you off this weekend because I have to work. Oh, all right. I had hoped at least he would accompany me to the station, but that hope was quickly crushed. I knew he was a workaholic. He often goes to work even on weekends, always seeming busy. But I wish he could spare a thought for how difficult it's going to be for me, heavily pregnant and carrying a lot of luggage, to navigate the trains. And while I understand that he's busy, I do get lonely sometimes. I don't want our baby, who will be born soon, to feel lonely. Moreover, I have been feeling anxious about whether we will be able to raise our child together at this rate. It's not just my child. When did he become so cold? With these complex feelings, I started packing. Since there was still time before I went back to my parents' house, I decided to send my luggage other than valuables by home delivery service. I, who had been hoping to welcome the baby to a clean house, had cleaned from corner to corner when I started maternity leave a little early. They say that women develop a nesting instinct when they become pregnant. I had prepared a baby bed and secured a space for the baby, and I was excited about starting a new life as a family of 3 when I came back in 2.5 months. But my sloppy husband kept dirtying the places I had cleaned. Maybe I was the one to blame for cleaning too early, but regardless, he seemed to have not lost his sense of living alone at all. He would leave half-drunk bottles of drinks scattered around and left cardboard boxes used for packaging the stuff he bought online, opened and left unattended. Come to think of it, I realized that I had never seen my husband cooking or cleaning since we got married. Despite the fact that I kept tidying up, things were only getting more disordered, and I started worrying about whether the house would be okay while I was away. But then again, the time of childbirth was imminent. The weekend arrived in a flash, and I headed to my parents' home. On the other hand, my husband really went to work without seeing me off. While relaxing at my parents' home, I was keeping in touch with my husband fairly well. We had email exchanges every day, and I would call him about once every 3 days. But gradually, my husband started not answering my calls more frequently. When I asked him, "You haven't been picking up the phone lately, are you busy?" During the rare times I got through, he started giving vague responses, like, "Well, yeah," or, "Not really." "You're not cheating on me, are you? I heard that many men cheat when their wives are pregnant." "Nah, why would I do that? It's annoying to be doubted." On the phone, my irritated husband made me feel cautious, and I quickly apologized, saying, "So, sorry." It's not good for mental health to have such unnecessary worries while nurturing a precious child in my belly. I must trust my husband. I decided so. Then, a few weeks later, my labor pains started. While I was preparing for admission to the hospital, I called my husband. I felt embarrassed to show my pained expression as I endured labor, but I wanted him to be there at the moment of birth, at least. Surely, my husband would also be moved by the birth of our child. The labor has started. It usually takes about half a day for the first child to be born, so you should be able to make it if you start now. I want you to be there at the moment of birth. See, you can even cut the umbilical cord. When I said so, my husband let out a sigh of annoyance. What? You want me to come by train right now? Sorry, I'm tired too, so I can't. I have work tomorrow too. What? You're still talking about work, even at this time? Our child is being born, you know. Is work still your priority? Shut up. There's no replacement for my job. This is the moment our child is born. It's not going to happen again. Like I said, there's no replacement for me. If I don't do it, the work won't go around. Can't you understand that? I'm cutting the call because I'm busy. I tried to persuade him somehow, but my words did not resonate with my husband. As I was cut off on the phone, I shed tears while enduring labor pains. Why is my husband so indifferent to our child's birth? From the moment a mother finds out she's pregnant, she puts her child first. But is a father so indifferent? And so, I faced my first childbirth alone, in solitude. The labor pains lasted for a full day, and a cute little boy was born the next day. Such a tiny, cute, and beloved existence. After getting discharged, my parents showered the child with love while teaching me various things about childcare. By the time a month flew by, I had become adept at bathing the baby. My parents expressed their concern, saying, "Are you okay with such a husband? We can't help worrying about you after we go back." But not wanting to worry them, I tried to reassure them, saying, "Well, I think I can manage somehow. My health is recovering faster than I expected, so maybe I'll go back next week." "Really? Don't push yourself. Let us know immediately if anything happens." "Yes, thank you." They often say that a postpartum body is like that of someone who has been in a car accident. But thanks to hormones, my spirits were high and my body was recovering steadily. I was also getting used to taking care of the baby, so I decided to go back home a little earlier than planned. While I was being cared for at my parents' house, there was hardly any contact from my husband, and even when I sent photos and videos of our son, he didn't show much reaction. I guess a parental heart probably sprouts as one actually raises the baby, and perhaps a sense of being a father wouldn't come up until he interacts with the baby. That's how I thought. I was trying to keep myself going with that thought. I decided to have my parents drop me off at home. I didn't tell my husband that I was coming home, but he should be at home since it's his day off today. I wondered what his reaction would be when he saw our child for the first time. Would my child like our home? After a few hours' drive, we arrived home. I carried my son while my parents lugged our luggage, and I unlocked the door. But what welcomed us was a dark and silent room. "We're home! A bit early, but we're back." "Hey, no one's here? Ugh, what is this smell?" Entering the living room, a foul odor hit our nostrils. Turning on the light revealed a sight I hadn't imagined. The room was in a state of disarray, reminiscent of a garbage dump. Dirty dishes and half-eaten pizza were stuffed in the sink. Clothes and food and drink trash scattered about. Half-drunk juice had mold floating in it, emitting a strong odor. The table was covered in stains and dirt. The shower room and sink were filled with black mold. The toilet was dirty and stunk. And in the crib we had prepared for our son, there were piled up unused cardboard boxes and garbage bags. I had told them to keep it clean for welcoming our son, but the reality was far from clean, and I was shocked. There's no way we can live in such a dirty house, and above all, I was most upset about the crib being soiled. Hey, isn't this too much? What's going on? There's no way we can raise a baby in a place like this. My parents were furious and searched for my husband, opening each room. But my husband was nowhere to be found. Where could he be on his day off? Another weekend shift, perhaps? But we don't even know if his previous shifts were true. He's not on a commission basis, so working on the weekend doesn't increase his salary, and his company is supposed to follow the calendar. I had honestly been doubting him always disappearing on the weekends. Let's try calling him. There was no way we could stand in such a cluttered room anymore, so I evacuated my bewildered parents outside for a moment and called my husband, but he didn't answer. Finally, my husband answered the phone when I called for the third time. Hey, where are you now? I was sleeping at home. Why? At home? We had searched the whole house, but neither my parents nor I had seen my husband. Could he possibly be buried in a mountain of trash? But we couldn't feel any human presence, and his tone didn't sound like he had just woken up. Then I heard a woman's voice over the phone. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but it was definitely a woman's voice. At that moment, I realized everything. This man, he's cheating on me. I can't believe he would cheat on me while neglecting our child. The house was a mess while we were gone. He was cheating on me, and I was furious. A father like this is unnecessary for our son. I'm fed up with a husband like this. If he likes the other woman so much, then I'll let him have her. How can you live in such a messy and rotting smelling house? Oh, I get it. Maybe a burglar came in? I need to report this to the police. Huh? You're at your parents' house, right? What are you talking about all of a sudden? My anger escalated at my confrontational husband, and I raised my voice. You're the one lying about sleeping at home, aren't you? Stop playing dumb. It's absolutely unacceptable to turn the crib into a garbage dump. I'm not coming back to this house. We're getting a divorce. I said this rapidly and hung up the phone. After that, I actually reported to the police that we were victims of burglary to punish my husband. I told my parents and son to go back to my parents' house first, and I waited for my husband in front of the house. Then the police arrived before my husband did. I invited them into the house as if I were welcoming guests, and soon after, I saw my husband coming this way. Unbelievably, there was a woman walking alongside my husband. My husband approached me with a face that seemed to say, "This is bad." Hey, you! You weren't supposed to be back until next month. But who is she? The woman standing next to him was glaring at me, arms crossed. And who are you, for that matter? What? In spite of running into his mistress, I felt strangely calm. I decided to ask the woman some questions. As it turned out, my husband had been meeting her while concealing the fact that he was married. I was so disgusted with my husband that I didn't know how to react anymore. Hey, at least hear me out. My husband tried to grab my shoulder in a fluster, but I slapped his hand away, not wanting him to touch me. Don't touch me. It's repulsive. The police are checking the room right now. I hope you feel embarrassed having them scrutinize the mess you've made. I'm leaving now. You can explain to the police. Goodbye. Leaving them with a parting shot, I headed back to my parents' house, leaving my husband and the woman in a daze. There were numerous calls from him, but of course I did not answer. I finally decided to respond that night. Apparently, he had explained the situation to the police, and he returned home with a troubled look. The police, pinching their noses against the foul smell and struggling to move around the room, must have been quite embarrassing for him, but he brought it upon himself. After being dumped by the woman he had been lying to, all that was left for my husband was his shame and a house in shambles. Come on, I'm sorry. Come back. I've been looking forward to seeing our son. If he truly felt sorry, he should have at least come to my parents' house. Thinking that he can apologize over the phone and everything would be fine shows what a terrible person he is. I can't imagine spending the future with him. Even though you never showed any interest before, you suddenly care? You weren't even there when I gave birth, despite me asking you to come several times. Well, I thought you knew that I would. I'll clean up the room. I can't do household chores without you. I need you. I can imagine my husband getting more desperate and breathless on the other end of the line as I continue to reject him. No matter how much you beg, it's not happening. You should have kept that woman. If you can't handle housework, have her do it for you. But that was just a fling. It was a momentary lapse. You're the only one for me, Ashley. A fling? Weren't you seeing her every time you said you had to work overtime? Well, that's, different. I pressed my husband, who was mumbling incoherently, and he confessed that he had been cheating on me with multiple women from his high school that he had reconnected with at a friend's wedding party. He's a scumbag either way. There's no point in talking. I started to feel chills listening to my husband desperately apologizing in a voice close to tears. I can't believe it. You disgust me. Were you planning to touch our son with those hands? Unthinkable. I won't do it again. I'll come to pick you up right now. I want to see you and our son. I'll prove my sincerity. Let's go home together. I couldn't believe what I was hearing from my husband's defiant voice. What is he thinking at this point? I can't trust you. There's nothing more to talk about. I'll raise our son on my own. Ashley, please, forgive. I hung up without hearing the rest of his words. The sound of the call ending echoed emptily in my ear. And so, our short marital life came to an end. Half a year has passed since then, and I decided to start working, relying on my parents. Once I've saved up enough money, I intend to leave my parents' house and start living on my own with my son. I am in the midst of divorce negotiations with my husband, mainly for the sake of alimony. Having limited experience living alone, my husband is apparently unable to manage household chores, and most of his meals are from dining out, leaving the house in disarray. However, that's no longer my concern. I will do my best, expressing my abundant love for my son.
Starting today, you're living alone in this house because your presence isn't beneficial for our child's upbringing. Right after giving birth, my husband dragged me into an old apartment near his parents' home. But how am I supposed to live alone in a place like this? Give me my child back. Don't cause a scene like that. It's disgraceful and it bothers the neighbors. Please be quiet. Beside my husband, my mother-in-law stood scowling and disregarding my pleas with harsh words. And, to add insult to injury, she started to leave bags of organic waste in front of the rundown building every day. With no place to throw away the accumulating trash, I reluctantly opened one of the bags to find something unbelievable inside. I am Sarah, a 27-year-old housewife. It's been 2 years since I married Alex, and we were anxiously waiting for our first child's birth. However, my joy was overshadowed by worries about Alex's spendthrift ways, his temper, and the relationship with my mother-in-law. We were living with his mother at his parents' home since his father passed away early. My relationship with my mother-in-law was far from pleasant. She criticized me at every turn, and Alex would frequently rebuke me, upset by our exchanges. "What kind of folding is this? You'll crease the clothes. Can't you do even this properly? Start again from the beginning." "But the other day, Mother, you told me to fold them this way." "What? Are you blaming me?" My mother-in-law threw the clothes I'd folded onto the floor, messing them up, and angrily pushed them into the nearby laundry basket. She constantly criticized my household chores, and more often than not, she would change her instructions, making it look like I was the one making mistakes.
"Sarah, why can't you remember simple things? Imagine how I feel, coming home from work and always having to hear about this."
Whenever Alex heard such conversations, he'd instantly lose his temper, lash out at objects, and blame me loudly. Alex was cold to me, yet strangely possessive. The only numbers on my cell phone were Alex's and his family's. My internet history was visible to Alex as if shared, and my location was monitored through GPS. I knew Alex was jealous before we married, but instead of getting better, the constraints worsened. I was tired and started considering divorce. I managed to contact a law firm I spotted on a billboard from a payphone at a store. I explained my situation and began preparations for divorce. Fortunately, I had some savings from before the marriage. The lawyer sympathized with my situation and assured me,
"We will definitely get your divorce settled. As for the payment, you can pay it in installments after your life stabilizes."
One day, I noticed I had been feeling unwell for a few days. I rushed to the hospital, and to my disbelief, I found out I was pregnant. I had been taking precautions to avoid pregnancy for the sake of the divorce, but Alex had hidden my medication, and I suspect that that was when I got pregnant. Mixed feelings of joy for the child and anger towards Alex's actions made me determined to divorce soon. But I had no family home to return to, and with severe morning sickness, I couldn't act as quickly as I wanted, and had to spend the days leading up to childbirth at Alex's family home. Alex, knowing about the child, softened his attitude, either convinced I wouldn't run away or genuinely happy about the child.
"We'll need to renovate the house for the baby. If it's a boy, he'll play basketball or football, and if it's a girl, she'll learn to respect men."
He shared his self-centered educational philosophy. All the while, I kept responding vaguely, knowing internally that I'll divorce once the baby is born. During my pregnancy, my mother-in-law said to me, "If something happens to you, the neighbors might misunderstand and think I did something. So Sarah, just focus on the baby and don't do anything extra. I don't understand why Alex had a child with someone like you. I'll take care of you until the baby is born, but I really wish you would leave." Despite her constant complaints, she stopped piling chores on me, and I was able to rest. My morning sickness was severe, but even though she complained, "What on earth can you eat? You're so troublesome," she did prepare meals, which helped me get by. However, I almost suffered from malnutrition and had to spend the week before childbirth in the hospital. I safely gave birth to a healthy baby boy and was about to contact my lawyer to proceed with the divorce from Alex as planned when I noticed all my pre-marriage savings were gone. My diary, where I documented harassment from Alex, and my mother-in-law, which I was planning to give to my lawyer, was also missing. Could it be Alex? I was shocked, and then I heard Alex's voice from behind me.
"Looking for this?"
I turned around, and there was Alex, smirking, and holding the diary that I had locked and hidden deep in the closet.
"You even locked it. What were you writing?"
"Give it back."
"Shut up. What were you hiding from me, your husband?"
"I'm preparing for our divorce. I can't live any longer with someone as unpredictable as you, who quickly resorts to throwing things and shouting to make me obey. I want a divorce," I declared, straying from my plan, but determined to see it through.
"Fine. I'll give you a divorce, but the kids are staying with me."
With that, Alex dragged me to a rundown apartment in the neighborhood near his parents' home.
"You staying close is bad for the kids. From today, you're living here alone. While you're living here, I'll let you see the kids once a week. If you leave, you'll never see them again."
"What are you saying? Give me back my kids." "Stop making a scene. You're disturbing the neighborhood. Please keep it down." Suddenly, my mother-in-law, who had joined us unnoticed, scolded me while holding my child. I need to get out of this situation somehow. I thought desperately, but no solution came to mind, and I was thrust into the dilapidated apartment. It seemed that Alex had noticed my intentions to divorce during my hospital stay and prepared this situation meticulously. My kids ended up with Alex, and I couldn't just abandon them in their current situation. The next day, I waited for Alex to leave before I tried to leave the apartment to check on the situation at my in-laws, but I noticed a strange smell. Investigating, I found to my shock that there were bags of organic waste dumped outside my room. I couldn't believe my eyes, but I immediately knew it was my mother-in-law's doing. "Oh, Sarah, You're just waking up. Even if we're taking care of the kids, don't you think you're lacking a sense of responsibility as a mother? Well, never mind. There's no space at our place for this garbage, so you could keep it here until garbage day. While holding my child, my mother-in-law brazenly said this to me when I visited her house. I have to get my kids back and contact a lawyer. Thinking this, I waited for an opportunity, but 3 days passed. Every morning during this time, bags of organic waste were dumped in front of my house. I was filled with rage, wondering what I had done to deserve this. However, on the 3rd day, a turning point came. It was when I was moving the usual bag of garbage dumped in front of my house. Usually, the garbage bag was black, but that day, it was a white bag that was see-through. And upon closer inspection of the bag, I noticed an envelope inside addressed to Sarah. I immediately took out the envelope and checked inside, where I found several $100 bills and a letter from my mother-in-law. In it, she wrote about wanting to help with the kids and the divorce from Alex, but being under surveillance and unable to do anything, that she had been putting envelopes with some money in the garbage bag since a few days ago, and an apology for what happened. Surprised by this, I checked the other garbage bags, and sure enough, there were envelopes in the other bags as well, each with a small amount of cash inside. I am truly sorry for all I've done. I knew about Alex's abhorrent behavior, and I was harsh to you because I wanted you to escape from him. Due to Alex's surveillance, I had to resort to such measures. I sincerely apologize for all the troubles I have caused. As for the money, I'm sorry I could only give you this much, while dodging Alex's watchful eyes. Yesterday I received a call from a lawyer. He didn't give me many details, but he mentioned he'll visit tomorrow noon. Please, run away with your child. I will deal with Alex. I'm really sorry. The note from my mother-in-law was written in ink that had blurred in places, perhaps due to her tears. Reading it, I realized for the first time that she too was a victim of Alex's behavior. I also learned that while she took good care of me during my pregnancy, she also managed to keep my child safe from Alex's scrutiny. The shocking contents of the letter left me bewildered. Given Alex's personality, it was possible that he had even been looking down on his mother just because she was a woman, even though she was his own mother. In the other bag was an envelope, filled not only with cash, but also more letters of apology, and countless pictures of my child. Feeling my mother-in-law's concern, I sorted my thoughts for the lawyer's meeting the following day and fell asleep. The next day, I was awakened by the sound of the intercom. When I opened the door, my worn-out mother-in-law was standing there holding my child. Alex is on a business trip starting today and won't be back for 3 days. This might be our last chance. I am truly sorry. What will you do now, mother-in-law? Won't Alex fly into a rage when he finds out the child is gone? Probably, but that's my responsibility since I raised Alex. Besides, I can't work at my age, and since I'm not very smart, I can't survive without Alex's support. I invited my mother-in-law into the house to hear more of her story. As it turned out, she had been subjected to a form of brainwashing from Alex and her late husband, who constantly told her she was incompetent. Her life was devoid of freedom, dedicated entirely to them. She wasn't even allowed to watch TV when her husband was alive, and it was only after his death that she was able to watch a few programs. It was through them that she realized something was wrong with her situation. However, she was unable to free herself and became cold and distant towards me when I came into the family as Alex's wife, hoping to prevent me from suffering the same fate. I may never forget what you said to me, mother-in-law, and my wounds may not heal easily, but you've paved the way for me to escape from Alex. Let's run away together. We have to avoid letting Alex ruin the rest of our lives. My mother-in-law looked puzzled at my words. I can't do that. I'm good for nothing. I'll only be a burden if I run away with you, she insisted. In the midst of all of this, the lawyer I had been consulting since before my pregnancy arrived. I told him everything that had happened, and his face grew grim as he listened.
What do you want to do, ma'am? Please tell me your true feelings. I will support you with all my might.
After some contemplation, the lawyer asked my mother-in-law with sincerity. She responded, I truly want to break free from Alex. I love him because he is my child. But living a life constantly being invalidated is unbearable. It's painful to think I won't see my grandchild anymore, but... With this story, she showed the lawyer her bruised arm. The bruise was so large it shocked me. When I asked my mother-in-law about it, she revealed that after I left, Alex had become abusive due to our child's crying at night. She said such incidents were frequent before our marriage, but had not occurred since I became his wife. The lawyer's expression filled with anger as he started persuading us to escape, promising to teach Alex a harsh lesson. Yet his persuasion fell on deaf ears, and my mother-in-law went straight back to her marital home, waiting for Alex to return. We couldn't change her decision, so the lawyer and I began preparing to flee. I called my cousin, explained the situation, and asked if I could hide at her place for a while. She accepted, crying, Why didn't you tell me sooner? I quickly packed and headed to my cousin's house with my child. A few days later, I got a call from the lawyer, asking if I wanted to participate in a discussion about divorcing Alex. During the call, the lawyer told me that my mother-in-law had changed her mind and would join the discussion. I decided to participate, as it was going to be the last time. On the day of the meeting at the lawyer's office, Alex and my mother-in-law were already there. Seeing me, Alex said,
I was worried. I will kick Mom out. Let's live together, just the three of us.
Ignoring him, I took my seat, and the lawyer started explaining about the divorce, alimony, and child support. Alex kept pleading with me to return, but I replied, Alex, the lawyer is speaking. Can't you listen when he is discussing something so important? Have you ever thought about how I feel? Hearing you talk about our life together when I'm already tired of it? Alex's face turned red, and he seemed ready to explode, but he held back, likely due to the lawyer's presence. After the lawyer finished explaining, and when the discussion had calmed down, Alex asked,
What are you so unhappy about? If it's not about Mom, we can work it out, can't we? How can you not understand that I love you so much? Do you really think we can divorce over something like this?
Love, don't make me laugh. You've isolated me from the outside world, subjected me to your anger. How can you be so selfish? I replied, laughing. Alex stood up, but sat back down at the lawyer's instruction. He then turned his rage towards his mother.
Why are you silent when Sarah is leaving because of you? How could you give her money without consulting me, ruining our child's happiness?
He shouted. To ensure Sarah's life wouldn't become miserable because of you. My mother-in-law retorted and produced an IC recorder that had captured the constant derogatory and controlling words Alex had thrown at me. She had been preparing for this day since before I got pregnant.
With this amount of evidence, a divorce would undoubtedly be granted, even if it comes to a trial. Would you rather agree to a divorce here and now, or let it escalate to a trial and have it become known to your company and those around you?
The lawyer grouped all the evidence I had gathered, thrusting a divorce at Alex. Alex, seeming resigned, slumped and signed the divorce papers, saying,
I'll divorce here. I'll transfer the money right away. Just give me another chance.
When? Right now? Do you have the full amount ready? As I responded to Alex's plea, he instantly brightened up, promising to arrange the money immediately, and rushed off to the bank. Returning quickly, a smiling Alex showed me the transaction history and asked,
How about now? Feeling like coming back a little?
I laughed out loud at this, replying, You can't can't be serious. You think if I come back, this money comes back too? I'll never see you again. With that final statement from me, Alex was stunned. And to put the final nail in the coffin, my mother-in-law chimed in. I've put up with a lot till now, but if it ends this quickly, it's for the best. Alex, I'm leaving you. I'll live on my own. She then handed out a piece of paper. Don't involve me anymore. If you do, I'll take this to the police. The paper was a medical report of injuries inflicted on my mother-in-law by Alex. Then the lawyer calmly stated, From your past behavior and evidence collected so far, your mother is well prepared to file a lawsuit. Alex broke down crying. Why? Even Mom is betraying me. In response to Alex's anguished voice, my mother-in-law grimaced and I addressed him. Betrayal. You're the one raising a hand to your family. Yet when you get hurt by that same family, you cry. We've been enduring all this time. Ignoring Alex, who was glaring at us in silence, I took my mother-in-law's hand and left the office. After that, the meeting at the lawyer's office with Alex concluded smoothly, and my mother-in-law sold the family home and moved to Atlanta, relying on her relatives. Apparently, she was living comfortably off her late husband's considerable legacy. As for me, I got a job in a faraway place after the divorce was finalized. Now, with the help of others around me, I am living a new life with my child. My marriage was filled with endurance and my own preconceptions, putting up with unnecessary suffering and almost ruining my life. I want my child to avoid such pointless endurance and hope they become a gentle person with their own will, consideration, and kindness towards others. While praying for this, I want to take care of my own heart and move forward in my new life.
I'm Janessa, 26 years old. I've been married to Steve, a year older than me, for 2 years. Steve works for the government, while I work part-time and am financially dependent on him. Our debts are limited to student loans and a car loan. From the start of our marriage, we wanted kids, but it always seemed financially challenging. With our student loans soon to be paid off, we started to think maybe we could afford it. One day, our home phone rang, and Steve answered. It seemed like it was my mother-in-law on the other end. I was doing house chores at that time and couldn't catch the entire conversation, but they seemed deeply engrossed in their chat. About 30 minutes later, Steve hung up, saying he'd discuss it with me. What's up? Anything wrong with mother-in-law? She said that Stella's wedding date is set. Stella is my sister-in-law. We get along pretty well, emailing occasionally. I had heard about her boyfriend, so learning about their upcoming wedding was heartwarming. Oh, really? Finally! When is it? For some reason, Steve didn't seem as thrilled. Well, about the wedding? Did something happen to Stella? My mom wants to contribute to the wedding expenses and is asking to borrow $10,000 from us. Wait, what? Why us? We're not in a position to lend that amount. She mentioned that Stella's fiancé intends to pay for everything without any help from his parents. But mother-in-law wasn't too pleased about that and wants to help out financially. Why would she borrow money from us when they're trying to handle it themselves? In fact, we received $7,000 from them for our wedding. Though we intended to repay it, after an intoxicated relative of Steve's dad caused chaos at our wedding reception, we considered it compensation for the ruined event. We shouldn't lend the money without discussing it first. Recalling our wedding, I remembered feeling upset with my in-laws, especially my mother-in-law, who made comments about my parents not chipping in. With a troubled look, Steve tried to persuade me. We do have savings over $10,000, but it's in a fixed deposit, and it's cheaper to borrow than break the deposit. It's a perspective we both share. Mother-in-law suggested that since Steve's a government employee, he could get a low-interest loan. She promises to repay us as soon as they receive the wedding gifts. But I just don't feel good about getting into debt, especially for this reason. Why should we borrow money to help mother-in-law show off? Moreover, it's surprising to know they're strapped for cash. Steve's dad runs his own business. And though mother-in-law works, I'm not sure about her job status. My sister-in-law has a full-time job. Each time we visit them, mother-in-law brags about her overseas trips, designer outfits, and luxury brands like Chanel and Louis Vuitton. She seems to be living beyond her means, which annoys me. Moreover, Steve mentioned mother-in-law intends to keep this loan a secret from Stella. If you're dead set on this, at least be transparent with your dad and Stella. I don't want to be part of any secrets. Well, I understand my mom's desire to look good. Let's just stay silent on this, okay? Janessa, don't you think you're being a bit too cautious? What? You're saying I'm being narrow-minded? No matter how much she promises to pay back, it's still a significant amount of money. We need to think about this. I was starting to get irritated by my husband's careless remarks. It's not that I dislike Stella. Stella's genuinely a sweet girl. She even stood up for us when that drunk uncle caused the scene at our wedding. I was planning to give her a regular wedding gift. The last time we met, she happily mentioned, "With the wedding reception expenses saved up, we can even go on a honeymoon." The $10,000 seems more for my mother-in-law than for Stella, and that doesn't sit right with me. I get that my husband earns his money, but we kept discussing this for days. He thinks since we won't technically lose out, why not lend it? But I can't stand my mother-in-law's casual attitude about borrowing money. Our talks never end well, and we risk slipping into arguments. This is the first time since our marriage that our views diverged this much. What really irks me about my husband is that if we do lend the money, he needs to explain the situation to his father and sister. But he's clearly reluctant because he knows his mom will hassle him about keeping it a secret. She helped us out during our time, so what's the big deal about lending for a short period? For our wedding, my side and his side split the expenses. I used my savings and the cash gifts we received. His parents covered his portion and later gave them the cash gifts they received from his side. That difference came to about $7,000. It's not about being stingy. That's a burden Steve took on. How does this concern me? He either had no comeback or simply didn't want to argue any further. He went silent. We didn't conclude, and in the days that followed, he kept receiving calls and emails from his mother. Lately, he's been ignoring her calls. "I'm just tired of her constant nagging about money," he'd say, frowning. The more I see him like this, the more I feel it might be worth the $10,000 to cut ties with his family. Finally, on a day off, he decided to visit his parents and sort things out. I doubted he'd refuse, so I said, "If you do lend it, make sure to get a written agreement from her." He came back later that day, looking drained. I got him to sit up and asked how it went. Apparently, while this was my mother-in-law's idea, his dad was on board too. They feel obligated as parents to contribute to the wedding, but they genuinely don't have the money. So they see borrowing from him as a temporary solution, thinking there's no need to tell their daughter. "Why are you so fixated on this?" they'd asked, emphasizing they don't want their daughter's fiancé to find out. They fear it would tarnish their reputation, which makes me wonder what they think of us. Then, my sister-in-law had told me earlier she had saved up money, but it looks like expenses for the venue decorations, attire, and production costs were more than she'd anticipated. Apparently, she's running short. So, she seems to be telling my mother-in-law that she'll pay her back with the wedding gift money and is asking for a loan. I doubt Stella ever imagined her parents would be asking us for money. According to mother-in-law, the amount they're short by is exactly what they were thinking of borrowing from us, about $10,000. Also, it seems there's been some friction between my sister-in-law and her fiancé over the wedding and reception, but it's unclear what the exact issues are. You know, should we just lend them the money secretly? You know how stubborn Janessa is, right? Wait, I told you I'm not okay with that. Did you not mention my conditions to mother-in-law and the others? Come on. You can see how much of a hassle it'll be if I tell them, right? Why do we have to deal with this on our day off? That's what I should be saying. They're your parents. I'm not even related by blood, so I'm the one getting dragged into this. Don't get it twisted. You really can be cold-hearted. You might say things bad about my mom, but it's not for her own leisure. Can't you understand a parent's feelings, wanting to provide for Stella? Don't you get it? If it's for Stella's sake, shouldn't they have thought about Stella's future way in advance and saved up? And Steve, he borrowed the maximum amount for his student loans because he just went along with what his parents said. Now he's struggling to pay it back. They've been on overseas trips since Steve was very young, and he doesn't even remember most of them. If they had skipped a few trips, wouldn't that have eased the loan burden? The bag mother-in-law carries is worth about $3,000. I don't like hearing bad things about my parents either. My bottled-up frustrations exploded, and I vented it all out on my husband. He'd been yelling with such intensity earlier, but now he's silently looking down. Thinking he might be angry, I took a peek, and he looked pale. That bag cost $3,000? Really? I silently showed him the price I found online for mother-in-law's bag. I'm not sure if mother-in-law's bag is genuine, but my husband isn't familiar with luxury brands and their counterfeits, so I kept quiet. Plus, mother-in-law always shows it off to me with pride. Even if it's a fake, she might have unknowingly paid a lot for it. What do mother-in-law and the rest plan for their retirement if they're spending lavishly but can't spare $10,000? You're right. My feelings are torn because it's my sister's wedding and I want to help as much as possible. But something's off with my mom and my dad. We're not saying anything about it. Seems strange, too. In that moment, my husband's perspective shifted completely, and he sided with me. I borrowed his phone and sent mother-in-law an email. To summarize the contents, why is it okay to make your son take on debt if you don't like borrowing from consumer finance? You called my parents cold-hearted for not giving money, but is making your son take on debt and give money kind-hearted? What do you think about not having $10,000 at your age? I understand the benefits of using the mutual aid system, but since my sister-in-law's fiancé is a public servant, shouldn't he be the one to take advantage of it? I wonder if my sister-in-law, her fiancé, and their parents even know about the situation. If they're unaware, how do they plan to recover the wedding gift money? Depending on their response, I'll reconsider my relationship with them. I sent a message articulating all these concerns in a very sarcastic tone. Back in college, I earned a master's degree in law, which seems rather useless in my daily life. But in moments like this, I feel as if I got it just to craft such messages. I showed my draft to my husband, and with his approval, sent it. In about an hour, a reply came. "You dare speak to your in-laws like that? Consider your place. Basically, it's Steve borrowing money, not your place to interfere. You've been married for about 2 years now, and it seems you can't have children. Maybe it's time for some self-reflection on your role as a wife." The condescending tone pissed me off, but there was no direct answer to my questions. Frustrated, I quickly fired back an email. "We haven't legally adopted you, so you're not my parent. Even if you were, I'd still ask what I want to know. My husband and I share our finances, so I believe I have a say in how we spend our money. And as I said, I'll leave the final decision to my husband. We're not struggling to have kids. We're both working and juggling car loans and your son's student loan repayments. So financial stability isn't easy for us right now. We've made plans, so please refrain from interfering. And I don't recall marrying you just to produce a grandchild for you." I've never spoken out against my mother-in-law like this before. I regretted the impulse email a bit, but my husband assured me, "If she says anything, I've got your back." The next email from my mother-in-law read, "You truly are a pitiful person. You think you can corner me with your pretentious behavior? How miserable. If I could turn back time to the day Steve first brought you home, I would oppose the marriage with all my might. If there's one thing I regret, it's not seeing your true nature sooner. If you ever find yourself in a tight spot, don't expect any help from me." Realizing that any reply would be met with more off-target remarks, I chose not to respond. However, my father-in-law, apparently having seen my email too, angrily called my husband. "That arrogant, uneducated little girl! She's not our daughter and we're not her parents. What was that email all about? Just because we've been polite, she thinks she can get carried away. Maybe it's because your story doesn't add up. Don't you think Mom's perspective is a bit off, Dad? I assumed your business was doing well, which is why Mom could afford all her luxuries. But now look where we are. Forget Stella's wedding costs. Shouldn't you two discuss your future plans more thoroughly? Otherwise, financial issues will just keep popping up. You're still under her influence, aren't you? Do you remember who raised you to be who you are today? Was it not me and your mother? You know, I only said it because I'm worried, right? We have our own lives to think about, and we can't always be there to help. If you're gonna act like this, Mom and Dad, we might not visit for a while. With that, he hung up with a puff. I feel bad for dragging you into this. I never meant for you to turn against your parents like that. No, it's okay. I grew up with them my whole life. There were things I didn't notice because I thought it was normal. It's good to have some clarity now. I'm sorry for dragging you into this mess. It's alright, as long as you're okay. We decided there was no point in arguing anymore. The wedding was getting closer, and thinking about my sister-in-law, who had no idea and probably thought our parents would help, we decided to tell her privately. So I reached out to her to meet up. Turns out, she had no idea about any of this. I had no clue things were this way. I didn't know Mom was struggling financially. I mean, I thought she was a bit careless with money, but she works too. So I assumed she was just managing her spending money. I'm sorry to bring this up, especially with the wedding around the corner. But if you need it, we're willing to lend you the money directly. Just let us know. No, that's too much. My husband hates debt, even the loan for the car we're using. He wanted to pay it off in full. If anything, we'll just get a loan. There's no need to borrow from you and Steve. We've had some disagreements about the wedding preparations lately, and if he found out about this, it'd just make things worse. Our budget is tight, but we'll try to make do, even if it means crafting things ourselves to save money. Well, if you need any help with things like a welcome sign or something, Steve and I can help out. Just ask. She thanked us, and despite not knowing about it before, deeply apologized for her mother's actions. It was tough to see her feel so guilty. As the wedding date neared, my mother-in-law contacted my husband. Apparently, she had said she might not attend our sister-in-law's wedding. I always wondered how my brother would explain to the relatives why she didn't attend. It would surely raise eyebrows. It's a shame because I was really looking forward to seeing my sister-in-law in her wedding dress. But I can't bring myself to apologize and go. It's just how it is. I'll ask to see the photos later on. A few months after that, we returned the $7,000 difference in wedding expenses to my mother-in-law and father-in-law. While our relationship hasn't ended completely, my husband, who often relocates for work, got assigned to a place far from his parents, so it's less likely we'll interact much anymore. On the wedding day, when my sister-in-law and her husband realized we weren't there, she confronted mother-in-law. She admitted she told us not to come. I'm not sure how the story got around, but her husband, who knew nothing about this until then, was furious. It seems he's developed quite a disdain for his in-laws. They always wanted the couple to live with them eventually. It's a sad outcome for them, but they brought it upon themselves. Looking back, maybe the reason they spent money recklessly, buying branded items and taking frequent trips abroad, was thinking they'd be supported if they lived with their son. Perhaps they borrowed money from us for the wedding expenses to keep up appearances, and told the fiancé to make sure he never found out. One day, when my husband and I were discussing this, my sister-in-law called me. Stella? It's been a while. What's up? Hey, Janessa. Long time no talk. I heard from my brother about your move. I wanted to send you a little something to celebrate. Is your current address still good? Aw, you don't have to do that. But thank you. We're moving in a few weeks, so this address is fine. I'll email you the new one later on. Please do. You never know when a blessing will come, but we're hoping for one soon. As a seasoned mom, you'll have to share some tips with me. Yes, we were finally expecting a baby. Absolutely. Reach out if you need anything. I will. Take care. I don't have any siblings, so having such a sweet sister-in-law makes me feel truly blessed. With one more family member on the way, I touched my belly, feeling motivated for the future.
Finally, off on time. Great job, me, I said, standing up from my desk. Working in sales overtime is not uncommon for me, but today, I was determined to leave right on time. Why? Because my favorite actor's starring drama was premiering tonight. I had to watch it live. With that thought, I left the office in high spirits. My husband should be cooking dinner, so I planned to eat and relax before the drama started. Oh, maybe I could enjoy a drink too. At home, I just want to unwind with my husband. Lounging on the sofa and watching TV is the best. I wanted to tell my overly excited self to calm down a bit. If only I could have a glimpse of the future at that moment, things might have turned out differently. My name is Alicia. I am a 27-year-old office worker. My husband Philander and I are in our first year of marriage. We are still in that sweet honeymoon phase. Philander, my college junior, has an innocent smile that I find adorable. He's a bit unreliable but has many friends and a cheerful personality, so being with him is always fun. That's why I married him. I'm home, I said, returning with some drinks. The smell of fried chicken wafted all the way to the entrance. Hungry, I entered the living room only to face a reality I couldn't accept. Welcome back, Philander said, smiling innocently, but that wasn't the issue. Who are you? I couldn't take my eyes off the man in the aloha shirt sitting there. I had passed a straw hat at the entrance without noticing, too excited about the drama. He nodded at me while eating fried chicken, and I instinctively nodded back. No, wait, that's not it. Who? Then Philander turns to me and says nonchalantly, my friend, we just happened to meet at the station. What? Invite a friend you just happened to meet at the station to our house out of the blue? Without even telling me? My mood takes a nosedive at this point. Philander seems to have lived alone since his student days, leading a rather carefree life. He has many friends, so he often stayed at their houses or invited them over. Even after marriage, this kind of things happens frequently. Moreover, most of these people are strangers to me. Sometimes there are even girls among them. I take Philander to another room and confront him. What's going on? You know you should tell me in advance if you're inviting someone over. But I just happened to meet them, so I couldn't tell you in advance. Then don't invite friends you just happen to meet to our house, understand? I feel like I'm lecturing a grade school child. I had a lot to talk about since I haven't seen them in a while, so I brought them here. Then go out for drinks or something. But it was my turn to make dinner. Is he serious? No. Is he really serious? Sometimes I just don't understand Philander's way of thinking. You could say he's earnest or inflexible, something like that. As this is going on, it's almost time for our favorite TV show. I sigh and decide to retreat to my room. Give me some dinner. With that, Philander scratches his head and says, I ate it all. I couldn't find his childlike gesture endearing, and I raised my voice without thinking. If you eat it all, it's pointless. Oh, I'm hungry. This happens at least once a month. I'm getting tired of getting angry every time. Did we rush into marriage? The next day, Philander comes home and we talk. I tell him I don't want strangers in our house, that I have said it many times, and if it continues, I'll consider divorce. Divorce? Philander is visibly shaken. It's only natural. I've told you many times. Also, please put in this month's living expenses soon. And you often invite friends but don't charge them for food, right? You should cover that cost, Philander. I'll cook, but I won't clean up. Don't make me say the same thing over and over. Then Philander nods sullenly. Will he understand now? Surely peaceful times will come now. A month later, when I come home from work and enter the entrance, I see unfamiliar bags and hats. No way. I rush to open the living room door and there are strangers again. Welcome back. Philander greets me with an unapologetic smile. My anger explodes. What's going on here? Everyone is taken aback and the atmosphere becomes tense. But I don't care. I have told you to stop this. Philander and his two friends visibly flinch. As I approach Philander, his friends quickly leave. I told you last time, right? You didn't forget what I said, did you? I said if it happens again, we're getting a divorce. Philander tries to calm me down, but I can't take it anymore. Don't you understand how it feels to come home from work and finally relax? I can't relax with strangers around, can I? They might be your friends, Philander, but they're strangers to me. I don't even know them. Why don't you understand? Then Philander starts making excuses. But Alicia, I thought it would be fun to have a lively house, and since I was on dinner duty, I thought it would be okay. Unable to control my anger, I smile. Understood. With that, I retreat to my room. The next day, I leave for work and head to the government office. Naturally, I'm going to get divorce papers. I fill in my name on the spot and head home. I wake up the sleeping Philander and thrust the divorce papers at him. What? What's this? Divorce papers? Huh? Philander is in a panic, but I have no sympathy left for him. I'm calling the movers to take my stuff. With that, I contact the moving company I booked yesterday, and they're ready to come right away. Wait a minute, what's going on? What's happening? Not understanding the situation, Philander continues to panic. I tell him, let's get a divorce. Despite saying that, he keeps asking why and how, and I couldn't take it anymore. I told you if it happened again, we would get a divorce. I have expressed my feelings, haven't I? How many times do I have to say it? I can't go on with you. Let's get a divorce. After saying it once more, Philander finally seems to understand and his face turns pale. He apologizes repeatedly, trying to gain forgiveness. I'm sorry, really sorry. Please reconsider. How can I live without Alicia? As this is going on, the movers arrive. I brush off Philander and welcome the movers with a smile. Furniture, appliances, my belongings. Philander watches in shock as they're carried out one by one. All of them were bought with my savings from when I was single. Some were even things I used when I lived alone. Speaking of which, there's also the expensive table and sofa that he said he would pick out for me because my room wasn't stylish before we got married. But since I bought them with my money, I'll take them. The movers are efficient and the room is quickly cleared. Hey, Alicia, wait! How am I supposed to live? I was a fool to think his helplessness was part of his charm. I feel so pathetic I could cry. I bring over 2 large cardboard boxes. These are the things you used before we got married. You'll be fine with these. I don't need them, so I'm giving them back. Inside are a small rice cooker, frying pan, and pots. Also, I have decided to cancel the lease at the end of the month, so you better leave soon. Philander clings to me as I speak calmly, but I am too angry to bear it any longer. That's how important this space was to me. Why didn't he understand? A promise is a promise. Write this quickly. I forcibly hand a pen to Philander, who is still reluctant to fill out the divorce papers. I told you clearly, if it happened again, we would divorce. It's no joke. I have told you to stop so many times. Besides, this condominium is in my name. You moved into the place where I lived when I was single, Philander. Yet, why do you keep doing whatever you want? Finally realizing I was serious, Philander reluctantly began to fill out the divorce papers. You said you would work hard to get promoted quickly when we got married, but in the end, it seems like people at work say you can't do your job. Thanks to that, you have a low salary. No prospects for promotion. You don't even contribute to living expenses. I should have chosen a more reliable man. As I sighed, Philander looked frustrated. I never thought we would divorce over something so trivial. It was a short marriage. I can't live with someone who can't think of others. I snatched the divorce papers and left the house. I decided to live in the company dormitory for a while and take my time looking for a condominium. At least for now, I can have my own space. But that peaceful life was soon shattered. A week later, while relaxing in my dormitory, my mobile phone rang. It was Philander. I answered the phone, annoyed, and he said he wanted to talk and asked me to meet him. Honestly, I thought it was a hassle, but it would be more troublesome if he kept bothering me. I agreed and headed to the condominium we hadn't yet cancelled. When I arrived at the entrance, Philander greeted me. As I entered the living room, Philander's mother was there. Why? My eyes widened as mother-in-law suddenly started accusing me. Alicia, what's this about suddenly wanting a divorce? How is this child supposed to live on his own? Mother-in-law adored Philander and always meddled in our affairs. I told her everything. I heard from Philander, but what's wrong with that? Isn't it good to have many friends? It's fun every day. No, it's not fun. To me, they're strangers. And why is his mother showing up now? My irritation grew. It's so pitiful that Philander is being divorced over something like this. Mother-in-law looked like she was about to cry, whether genuinely or not. Oh, really? So I am not pitiful? I almost said those words, but swallowed them. It's pitiful for my son to be divorced. I should have married him to a younger girl. I reached my limit at that point. After all, she's a stranger to me now. I don't need to hold back. Yes, marrying a younger girl and getting financial help from parents to support the marriage would be something new. Or maybe you're looking for a high-earning young girl. Living in a cheap apartment with low salaries might work too. It fits your lifestyle. When I said that, both mother-in-law and Philander stared at me shocked. From the beginning, Philander wanted to live in a nice condominium, wanted stylish furnitures, and had desires he couldn't fulfill with his earnings. So I contributed more to living expenses. I thought it was okay since we were married, but inviting various friends into our space without any consultation is beyond common sense, don't you think? I glared and mother-in-law looked away. Having many friends and having fun? Do you really think so? If you do, shall I bring my friends to your house and suddenly drop in? I'll visit suddenly when you're relaxing, mother-in-law. Mother-in-law shook her head, trembling. Then you understand how I feel, right? You can't say such things because it's not your business. I turned to Philander. And Philander, remember when you said you didn't want me to invite my friends over because you didn't know them? You didn't come home all day that time, did you? I've always felt that way. Why don't you understand? I clearly remembered something I had almost forgotten. Philander looked guilty. So why did you bring mother-in-law here? Did you think you could persuade me and live a wealthy life again? Finally, Philander spoke. But we said we'd be together forever when we got married. Wasn't it fun being with me? Is he a child? I was shocked and appalled by his unexpected words. You can't live a married life based on whether it's fun or not, right? I felt a strange calmness, having moved beyond anger. I sighed heavily. Being with Philander was fun, but there were times when it felt like dealing with a child. I'm not your mother, you know. Grow up a little. Let's be together forever isn't a child's promise. We both have to work hard to live together. That's why I divorced you. Philander had nothing to say. Also, I would like you to pay back some of the living expenses you didn't contribute. As I said this, exasperated mother-in-law looked at Philander. You were supposed to put in living expenses, but you said you spent it on fun lately and didn't put it in. Roughly calculated, it's a total of $200,000. A grown man who works and can't even put in that much is pathetic, isn't it? Suddenly, mother-in-law became hysterical. Philander, you're a good-for-nothing who can't even pay living expenses, just like your father. I remembered Philander telling me that his father earned little and his mother had always worked. Is it genetic? Is it really genetic? Pay that money back promptly. Come back home for now. Suddenly, mother-in-law switched from Philander's side to mine. Well, that's how it is, so don't contact me anymore. There was nothing left to say. I looked around the room, almost empty of belongings, and sighed again. Goodbye. It was completely over for me. As I left the room without looking back, I heard Philander's voice from behind. Sorry. Thank you for everything. I felt refreshed as I left the familiar condominium. I failed in marriage, but now I can move forward. Later, Philander transferred the $200,000 he hadn't put in for living expenses. Apparently, mother-in-law is passionate about re-educating him, and he has changed jobs to a company near his parents' home, living under mother-in-law's financial management. I feel so relieved. Now, let's work hard today.
My name is Olivia. I recently gave birth to my daughter Elena, who's about to turn 1. My husband has been incredibly supportive, especially since this is our first child. I'm very grateful for him. But there's a problem with my in-laws. My relationship with my mother-in-law Helen was already strained, leading us to a state of estrangement. Let me first talk about the incident that led us to this point. From the beginning, Helen and I never got along. Once I went to their home for a family meeting. I was greeted by balloons and decorations that were blatantly feminine, and the dinner menu was filled with ingredients I specifically said I couldn't tolerate. My husband was furious, and he deeply apologized to me when we got home. At that point, I was rethinking the whole marriage, but my husband desperately convinced me to proceed under certain conditions. Helen and I would only see each other during major life events. No shared meals, If we visit the in-laws, no overnight stays. If my husband wants to visit them during holidays, he goes alone. I would visit my own parents, and absolutely no sharing of our contact information. At the time of our marriage, it was already rare to have a landline at home, so fortunately, direct calls were never an issue. We decided that if these conditions were broken, I'd go back to my parents, and we would either sever ties with Helen or get a divorce. But Helen continued to create issues. Take our wedding, for example. We couldn't exactly not invite her. However, she showed up in a painfully inappropriate white mini dress. She was promptly escorted out by the staff and had to rejoin the ceremony in what I assume were her regular clothes. Every time she met relatives from my husband's side, she would complain. I had that dress made for my son's wedding, but the bride complained. I want my money back. Everyone just awkwardly chuckled. No one blamed me, thankfully. In fact, they comforted me. She even tried to insert herself during the cake-cutting ceremony and deliberately attempted to spill wine on my dress. She was removed from the venue midway, and my husband apologized to me profusely. My husband had been apologizing profusely to my parents and relatives. He kept saying, "It's so embarrassing to have a mom like that." Even my parents and relatives had seen Helen's erratic behavior. Some suggested we should reconsider the marriage, but after seeing my husband's sincere apologies and his regretful face, they felt he wasn't a bad guy. They even offered words of sympathy. Life was peaceful for a while. It was just the two of us in our new home. Then one day, something happened. I usually work from home and rarely go out. My husband knows this. It's been our style since we started dating. But Helen didn't like it one bit. She'd say things like, "You can't possibly be doing legitimate work from home. You must be up to no good, probably having men over." My husband defended me then, but Helen was not one to back down easily. She continued to sulk. Then came a day when I had an outside job and left the house. When I got back, something felt off. First of all, the door was unlocked. I thought we might have been robbed and called my husband. "Hey, you're still at work, right?" "Yeah, what's going on?" "I told you I had work outside today, right? I locked the door when I left, but now it's open." "Is someone inside?" I listened carefully. Footsteps. The sound of someone rummaging through our things. Someone's in the house. "Got it. I'm coming home. Go hide out at a nearby diner." I did as he said, waiting at a nearby diner. Minutes later, he called my cell. "I'm sorry." "What happened?" For a moment, I thought he was cheating, but the reality was worse. "Turns out my mom had made a copy of our house key." "Are you kidding me?" Apparently, Helen had stolen a key from his key ring when he visited home and had it duplicated. "That sounds criminal. It's your fault for not giving me one in the first place." I heard Helen's voice in the background. I couldn't believe it. I had my husband hand her the phone. "Listen, Helen. Clearly you don't understand what being a daughter-in-law means. You should be begging me to come over any time. And you never visit on holidays or celebrate Mother's Day. You're even wearing flashy underwear." I was embarrassed and infuriated to realize she looked through my drawers. "You're the one who's out of line. Liam had a hard time at our wedding because of you. You not only stole a key but snooped around our personal stuff. I'm done. I was considering still taking part in any family rites, but now I won't even bother with a funeral." I hung up and texted my husband. "I can't stay in that house tonight. I'm going to a business hotel. Please clean up the house. If you can't deal with Helen, I'm going back to my parents." Within a minute, he texted back, "I'm sorry, I'll take care of it. I want to cut ties too." From then on, it became taboo to bring Helen and me together at any family gatherings on my husband's side. When I was invited, Helen wouldn't be, and when Helen was there, I wouldn't go. In fact, ever since an incident at our wedding, the number of relatives who wanted Helen to attend had decreased. My husband often went in her place, so it wasn't a problem. This marked the end of my estrangement from Helen. But now we have a daughter, our first child, so we decided to reach out to my in-laws. All along, the silent party has been my father-in-law, George. He's quiet, for better or worse, and he can't stand up to Helen. Since Helen and I don't talk, George and I lost touch too. George is a good man, so we figured it was more for his sake that we decided to visit. We thought about asking Helen to leave for the day or inviting George over, but he has mobility issues, and it would be weird to kick Helen out of her own house. In any case, Helen wasn't going anywhere. So we decided that a brief visit with George couldn't hurt. Things went surprisingly well during the visit. Helen was smitten with our daughter and couldn't help but say, "She's so adorable. She looks like her dad. Reminds me of Liam when he was a tot." George too looked pleased, speaking volumes with his few words. It was the first peaceful moment we'd had with my in-laws since getting married. A few days after that calm visit, something happened. I was home alone with my daughter when the doorbell rang. It was a food delivery from my in-laws. The note simply read, "For her first birthday." We planned to prepare something ourselves, but I was touched they'd gone to the trouble. I thought we'd open it when my husband got home. Hours before he was due back, I had a bad feeling. I opened the gift, and what I found was shocking. My husband came home at that moment and asked, "What are you looking at?" I said, "It's a first birthday meal for our daughter from Helen," and threw it into the trash. Shocked, he shouted, "What are you doing? No matter how bad my mom is, you don't have to throw away what she gave to our daughter. You should apologize." Without even turning around, I asked, "Did you look inside?" Furious, he retrieved the gift from the trash. At first glance, it might have seemed normal, but the selection was horrible. Chicken feet, a cake shaped like a black cat using chocolate, shark fin soup, octopus, 13 peanuts, and a mirror? All in all, a parade of inauspicious items. I wondered where you could even find such a collection of bad omens, but she probably went to the trouble of making it herself. It was clearly not a kind gesture, but a deliberate act of malice. Seeing the contents, my husband stormed out holding the gift. I wanted to say goodbye, but ended up getting into the car forcefully. Any parent would speak up after something like this. As I tried to get in, my husband hesitated, wanting to say something. But one look at my face and he simply drove away. We walked right into Helen and George's house without even knocking, using our own key. "What the heck is going on here?" Helen and George were in the living room, apparently eating leftover chicken for dinner. When Helen saw the gift bag in my husband's hand, she said, "Oh, it arrived. Nice celebration meal, isn't it?" Her face looked genuinely pleased. A nice celebration meal? It's all filled with bad luck and inappropriate items. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, huh? "Oh, come on, it's lavish. I put a lot of care into making it. Just be grateful and use it." Who in the world would use such bad luck, inappropriate items for a first birthday celebration? "Oh, were they bad luck or inappropriate? I didn't notice." I couldn't believe she said that with such confidence. I recalled what she had packed. The cat-shaped cake may look cute, but black cats are often associated with evil. Shark fin soup isn't exactly animal friendly or environmentally conscious. Then there were 13 peanuts, which are not only a high allergy risk for a 1-year-old, but the number 13 is often considered unlucky. The gift was entirely inappropriate. Given all this, it's hard to believe she didn't know what she was doing. And the chicken, it was a single leg, hardly lavish. If they had simply sent their delicious fried chicken, it would have been a much better celebration gift. That's the crux of it. So you didn't know, huh? Then why don't you guys eat it?
How dare you even say that?
My husband then spoke up and Helen sighed heavily. You know, I've been thinking for a while. You take everything so negatively. Like that balloon during the family meeting. It simply looked feminine. It's art, dear, art. Helen continued, a little snorted. And at the wedding, I wore a white dress because it suits me. There's no rule saying a mother can't wear white. As for the cake cutting, I just wanted one last memory. You two are the mean ones, always taking away my joys. With that, Helen gestured. You've been so spiteful, so give back the money spent on the dress and this celebration. I was so flabbergasted I couldn't speak. Just stood there holding our daughter. Are you kidding me? I looked at my husband, whose face was red with anger. What?
Ever since our wedding. No, for as long as I can remember, you've been embarrassing. You always sabotage events if you're not the center of attention.
That's not true. My husband began recounting.
It was the same during my own birthdays. She didn't want to do anything because she wasn't the center of attention. Even the birthday cakes were always what my mom liked. So I told her since elementary school that we didn't have to celebrate my birthday anymore.
A young boy saying he didn't want a birthday celebration? He must have really disliked it. As he spoke, tears flowed down my husband's face.
My mom would still force a birthday party every year, and even the gifts she chose were ultimately for herself.
I later heard that the gifts my husband received were things like books that were more to Helen's taste, or craft supplies he would never use. Whenever he said he didn't need them, Helen would go, I thought it would be fun if we could use it together. Fine, I'll just keep it. That would get annoying.
I thought I'd only have to put up with this stuff from her, but she started doing it to Olivia too. I can't take it anymore. I'm cutting ties.
My husband declared. What are you talking about? You're our only child. What's going to happen to us?
As if I care.
I've done so much for you. What is she talking about? Everything Helen did was for herself. My husband felt the same way.
All the things Mom's done, it's all for herself. She needs to be the star of any celebration, so I can't imagine any future event where she won't want to steal the spotlight. And that's just sad.
That's not true. Helen was clearly rattled, but my husband's mind was made up. He then turned to George.
Thanks for secretly buying me birthday gifts and taking me out to eat when Mom wouldn't celebrate my birthday.
You!
But I can't forgive that you didn't stop her from ruining our wedding or causing this whole mess. I won't let Olivia or our child see you if she doesn't want to.
George looked down, saying nothing.
We're leaving and we're going to move. You won't hear from us or see us again, and we're not telling you where we're moving to.
Please rethink this. Helen was desperate and crying.
No can do. It's not just Olivia who can't handle this anymore. I can't either. I wouldn't even want to attend my own funeral at this point.
How can you say such a thing?
I hate it that much. I don't want to see you again. I'm sorry for everything until now. From here on out, it'll just be the three of us.
Finally, I found my voice and tears of relief started to flow. I'm sorry I couldn't understand earlier.
It's my fault for not speaking up. Let's go.
My husband took my hand, and we left his parents' home for good. Life became hectic for us. We were busy choosing a new home and packing, and before we knew it, the days had flown by. Oddly, Helen never showed up. When I casually mentioned Helen to my husband, he dryly laughed. "I'd like to think Dad is holding her back." Now we've moved and are living in a different area. No more surprise visits from Helen, no more contact. My husband occasionally communicates with George, but they haven't met. They probably never will. Maybe one day, it might be okay to meet with just George.